Kim, we good? You're good. Okay. All right, everybody. Oh, wait a minute. Where's Senator Peters here? I won't rat anybody out about getting donuts.
Don't ask to look out. Brought them in, John.
No, it's we can thank Senator Elfreth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. They are, Annapolis's best, Carlson's.
Charlie Barkley used to bring them into the house every week.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Happy St. Patrick's Day voting session. 85. Office of Immigrant Affairs.
Senate Bill 85, EHE is primary on this, budget and tax. Your secondary, this would establish an Office of Immigrant Affairs to assist immigrants in the state. You should have an amendment from EHE. I think it's just one line. I think it's trying to mitigate any fiscal impact of the bill. It says subject to the availability of funding on page 3 when it's listing the office's duties. Regarding the fiscal note, I would point out that the bulk of the fiscal cost is related to a requirement in the bill for positions. So notes assuming 4 positions. That's on page 3, lines 8 and 9.
Okay. We chatted about this before. Any further discussion? Yes, sir.
We're secondary. What
We
was
are.
the vote in EHE?
7-4. Party line.
Party on, party time. So to be clear, this doesn't mandate the degree. It says if the governor puts money in. Is that what it
That's
says?
apparently what this amendment does.
Well,
Thank you.
the bill still requires staff for the office.
It requires it, but anything beyond staff is what you're saying.
Right. So yeah, the duties of the office start on page 3, line 11. The EHE amendment inserts subject to the availability of funding, which would apply to all those duties from page
Page
3,
what?
line 11 on to page 4.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well.
Sorry. The EHE amendment on page 3, line 11 inserts subject to the availability of funding. So from line 11 on page 3 down through page 4, going down to page
Okay,
25.
wait. We have a different version, I think.
You don't have a reprint.
Oh,
The amendment was just one line. I didn't think it was
okay.
worth.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So that change would be applicable to the office's duties, which are on page 3, line 11, all the way down to page 4 on line 25.
Okay.
So that was the amendment they adopted.
Okay. Yes, Senator Eckert.
I'm sorry. How many people? I'm just trying to pull it up, having a little bit of trouble getting the fiscal note up.
You want to know how many people are there being hired?
Right.
The note assumes 4, a director, an attorney, and 2 administrative aides.
And we're
That part's going to be funded for sure.
Pardon?
There's a mandate for that, yes?
Yes.
There's a
Yes.
mandate for that funding, but not for any programmatic efforts after that.
Correct.
But it creates another office. I mean, I'm sympathetic to the issue. I'm a little worried that we're creating too many new things, and that's my concern. Within existing resources, because you can't use CARES money for one shot for positions, and it just, you know, we're going to have to sustain these things in the next 4 or 5 years, and that's part of my concern. Thank you.
Anyone else? Is there a motion? As amended? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Got it? Okay. 699.
Senate Bill 699, this would extend the, for 4 years, the Baltimore Regional Neighborhood Initiative Program.
What's the cost on that?
Cost on that would be estimated at $9 million a year. The governor's capital budget has an assumption of $3 million in the out years, so the bill would extend the $12 million mandate, so the difference in cost would be $9 million a year.
Mandate currently exists.
Mandate currently exists, expires after fiscal '22.
How many years has it existed?
You know, I think it was 2015 or 16.
And it extends it at the same amount or less?
It extends the same amount. It doesn't increase.
Through fiscal 2026.
So the current expiration is 2022. It would change that to 2026. Everything
Okay,
else.
we got a motion?
Can I
Is
ask a
there-
question first?
Absolutely.
What was the fiscal note again?
$9 million per year for each of the
Per
4
year? I'm just, we've got this COVID funding that will help us for this year. I'm just want to be sure we're not making promises that we can't afford the next year. Are we okay with that?
I think we're okay.
You do?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got some flexibility.
All
I mean, we do every year, as you know.
Yeah.
And I think we're within it. We're going to bring up a couple more items as we move down this chart. We're going to have to have those, continue to have those discussions, important discussions. But I think we have some flexibility on some things. Senator Edwards.
Yeah, this is Bernie, right?
Correct.
Correct.
And it's 12 million, and if my memory's correct in the budget, it says 6 million from capital and 6 million from operating. Does this 9 million stipulate any spread, or is it all just says 9 million?
The program, it's budget bill or capital.
Okay. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, we're good? Just been seconded. All those in favor? This is for Bernie. All right, that's everybody. That's it, Senator, you're done. I'm telling you, you're done. Oh my gosh, we got it on the next one too, huh? Oh my gosh, oh my gosh.
This is real money.
Yeah, this is real. This is for discussion at this point. You know, I know we've brought this up before. We got some things, a couple things to talk about today. We are going to get this bill done. So for those who are listening in and watching, we're going to get it done. But we're just taking it step by step. Go ahead.
There we go. Senate Bill 199 is the Maryland Transit Administration funding. It's the Transit Safety and Investment Act. Like the chair said, this was discussed earlier in session, and since that discussion, the fiscal note writers have issued an updated fiscal note. So all the numbers should be on the same page now. The meat of this bill is about mandating funding for state of good repair needs for the Maryland Transit Administration. And I think the easiest way to understand what the bill is doing is if you look at Exhibit 1 of the fiscal note, page 4 of the fiscal note. I passed around the relevant page just a few minutes ago, so you should have it on your desk there. There you can see what the mandate is doing for each fiscal year. The mandate runs through through fiscal '28. But it has the amount, the first amount there is the amount that MTA is planning to spend on state of good repair needs for the system. And then the bill is going to mandate the number below it. So for fiscal '23, you can see the administration is planning on spending $402 million. The bill is going to mandate that at least $361 million be spent. For fiscal '24, you can see they're planning on $502 million. It's going to mandate $414 million. One of the
So
interesting
in other words, FY '25 is the first year that the administration actually would be spending less than is within the bill.
Correct. But if you notice, there's a negative number below that. So one of the interesting aspects about the bill is if the administration overspends in the fiscal year before the year that they're underspending, they can count that overspend towards the so in fiscal '25, because in fiscal '24 the administration will have spent $87 million more than was mandated in fiscal '24. They'd get a credit for that in fiscal '25, so that credit would carry forward, and they wouldn't have to spend up to the amount that's being mandated. But it doesn't help them when you get to fiscal '26, '27, and '28. Those years, there just wouldn't be enough carry forward.
So what is the logic behind, well, let me ask you this. The House has already acted on this, right?
Correct.
Did they take the higher numbers in '23 and '24?
The House took. They took the higher number for '23, the $402 million. In '24, they used $502 million.
So it erases the issue that you were talking about in a sense.
Yes. And then for the out years, the House just used $450 million for the next 25 through 28.
Okay, very good. Okay. Yes, please.
I've gotten, probably the rest of us have too, but I've gotten several emails and watched the Twitter feed today about this bill and accusing me of not supporting transit. And I just, for all the millions who are listening to this meeting this afternoon, I absolutely support transit, but I don't believe it is the only mode of transportation that people need. My area finds that transit is not reasonable. It's not easy for us in the upper part of Montgomery County. And so I support transit and I support roads. And that's it. Thank you.
And there you go. Senator Quarterman, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, similar to the previous comments, I often in the rural part in the Western Maryland area, sometimes, when transit comes up, most of the time it's because of lack of opportunities. We don't have a whole lot of transit opportunities in Western Maryland. And the last couple of years, I've been pushing forward a Western Maryland MARC rail extension study. And what I would like to possibly, is, as we're having this discussion, is to have some language added potentially to this bill to incorporate that, potentially going forward. I spoke to the bill sponsor about it, and I just wanted to bring it to the committee as well to get your guys' feedback on what you thought about that. But that was something I wanted to bring here today.
So this is for a study?
Correct. Yeah, it's Senate Bill 869 was the bill this year. We did last year. We presented it in the House, obviously, when I was there, and it passed out of the House, and then it came over here to the Senate the last day before we had hearings, before we shut down. And it's a study to identify up to 3 potential routes of extending MARC rail to Western Maryland, because right now, as we know, it comes up through the Brunswick lines, comes to Frederick, and then it dips down up through West Virginia, which in the far western part of the state, we find that, a little interesting that MARC goes to West Virginia, but it doesn't come to Western Maryland. So.
Okay. Senator Edwards.
Real quick, Matt, you said 26 through 28, the House passed spending at 450?
Yeah, and then the House added another mandate for fiscal '29 at 318.5 million. So correct for fiscal '25 through fiscal '28, the House mandated it at $450 million for each one of those fiscal years, and then added a mandate for fiscal '29 at 318.5 million.
Could you run those by again one more time so I can write them down too?
So
So they did the first two, 23 and
So
24, as we discussed.
Right.
25 was what?
fiscal year '25 is 450 million, and it's 450 million for '26, '27, and '28. And then fiscal year '29 is 318.5 million.
So in other words, they just spread out the money for 3 years, essentially, right? If you
Yeah.
add all that up, does that equal spreading it out for an extra year? I'm sorry.
I haven't added it up, but that's what I would assume.
Yeah,
So this is added on top, for a better way to say it, of WMATA, what we put in WMATA. Are we putting big increases in that?
Well, mine
Mass
is what
transit
it is.
system.
We've already dealt with that.
No, I know, but I'm just asking the question.
Yeah.
Because it all deals with mass transit is what I'm getting at, and based on construction, which this money, realities are it's gonna take it away from,
That's
you can get it to me
160 I
later.
think it's like 169 a year. That's
You can get it to me
160
later.
I think it's like 169 a year is our portion, or is that the right amount? What's our portion for the WMATA deal? 165 a year for, that goes on forever. And that's our portion of the 3 jurisdiction amount, if I'm remembering correctly, and you're helping me out.
I think that's right.
Okay? All right, so I wanted to go through that. I wanted to go through what the House has done. We will revisit this later in the week. You have something else to say, Senator McCray?
Yes, sir. Just a piece of information that the House also had another piece on top of it that I just want to make sure that the committee is aware of. It's dealing with the purple line and the grant program.
And what?
Dealing with the purple line and a grant program. I just didn't want that.
Okay,
not
what's
to
that
be
about?
recognized. I'll let Matt explain it, but I wanted to make sure it was brought to your attention.
Senator McCray is correct. There was an additional amendment the House added that would create the Purple Line Construction Zone Grant Program. And it would require MTA in conjunction with the Department of Commerce. In fact, I think Commerce is gonna actually do the implementation of it. But it creates $1 million in grants for both fiscal year '23 and '24 that Commerce would then distribute to businesses that were impacted by the Purple Line Construction Program.
Okay? Yes, sir.
I just wanted to sort of generally make the point that I'm for this. I think I'm a co-sponsor of it. I think it's very important. But it's only a piece of the puzzle. And Senator Corderman's proposal of studying the expansion of MARC to Western Maryland kind of raises this issue in my mind. The fact of the matter is that President Biden's infrastructure plan is coming down the track or the road, depending on how you want to look at it, this year, that will be addressing a lot of these issues. And I frankly, definitely dealing with rail, definitely dealing with roads, definitely dealing with transit. And not just maintenance, which this deals with, which is very important, but also with expansion. And so I think it is useful in this bill, if we pass the bill, to be thinking ahead. And I think Senator Corderman's proposal is right in that spirit.
Very good. Senator Eckert.
Thank you very much. This reminds me of another discussion we've already had this year. And my question is, how many projects will get bumped because of this? We've got a 100-year-old critical berth infrastructure there at the port. We've got a lot of bridge maintenance and resurfacing that has not been completed. And I guess I'm concerned about how we deal with all of those and the flexibility of the department to be responsive to the jurisdictions when they need to be.
Okay. Right, understood. Yeah, that's, it's a, I think as you look across all of the, actually, it's a good question to learn about the priority projects on the, from the road trip, from the road shows. Yeah. We gotta just see where that is.
And on top of that would be if we target funds for a certain area and we prolong or we delay the lack of refurbishing, then it's going to cost us that much more in the future.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
how
it's a
are
good
we-
point. I think, I really do believe, Senator Roosevelt made a very good point. We're going to see some, yeah, it's occasional, but it's true. No, I really do think he's right. We are going to see, I think, a fairly substantial amount of money coming. We got a couple things going on right now. As you may recall, there were cuts in this last year's budget to system preservation in the 21 budget. It is my belief that that's going to be addressed in the next few days, in part because of all the stimulus money that's coming in, because of even prior to this particular act, dealing with the previous CARES Act. Then there's more coming with this stimulus, and there'll be more coming with the infrastructure.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. I'm just concerned that we've been down this road before.
So to speak.
And we've had to, use the money, and then when it was all gone, then we had created enough activity that we couldn't sustain it. And then you're in a crunch time. And I know this is a little bit different because of the nature of the revenues that are coming in. But as I sat on the floor today and looked at all the fiscal notes of all the new initiatives that we're doing, and I'm concerned that our existing infrastructure with state government is pretty skinning down over the years, that I don't think we're going to be able to sustain it. And that's my greatest fear. How can we be reasonable and deliberative in using what we have, getting it out as quickly as we can, but then be careful we don't start things that we can't finish and maintain. Thank you.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. You're absolutely right. And if we're not doing that kind of planning, shame on us. You're absolutely right. Senator McCray.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to recognize that I also hold the good senator's thoughts too. But I would also like to recognize that in the first 3 years, so the first 2 years, there's no change. In the third year, we're talking about $7.5 million. And the three later years is what we're really talking about. And even the House was thoughtful when they spread that out the last 3 years, that extra year. So just wanted to say we also hold the same sentiment in reference to making sure that the resources are there. And that was a thoughtful approach too. So just putting that out there.
Very good. Okay, I'd like to move on then, unless anybody has anything else. All right, thank you very much. All right, 259.
Senate Bill 259 is the Department of Transportation Grant Anticipation Revenue Vehicle Bonds. It changes how they calculate the debt limit for the Garvey bonds, as they're usually called. Currently, there was just a flat authorization of $750 million. This would create sort of a revolving credit line where they just couldn't exceed $750 million as of June 30th of any year. So I think the idea is that it would go up and down the amount that that MDOT is borrowing from the bonds and then paying off. Senator McCray brought an amendment forward that he would like to be considered. You should have the reprint in front of you. The amendment would essentially require the department to only use the proceeds from the bonds that are being issued for 6 projects. And those 6 projects are listed in the amendment.
Okay, so for those of you not familiar with the Garvey bonds in general, this is bonding that we're using federal dollars to pay the debt service.
Correct. These are federal grants that are being, that the state's issuing debt that are going to be paid for when the grants come through from the federal government.
Okay, Senator McCray, you want to talk about your amendment?
Yep. Just wanted to say the first time that we did this also was the ICC, just making sure that we recognize that, and we let the agency have that ability to be able to do it, but we didn't let that go on forever, type of thing. So just making sure that the legislature is still represented to some degree with this. Working with the Secretary's office, working with my counterpart over in the House of Delegates, trying to figure out projects that were already in the CTP to make sure that it's represented geographic and large projects that are challenging to get done, and giving them the opportunity to do that. You'll see that on page 2 of 3 with those 6 projects.
Right, and those are the ones the administration sort of forward-thinking on, why, the ones that they think they would likely use that.
So,
Interesting, I note in that list, I'm speaking of sort of transit issues that go to the farther reaches of our state. The one that includes, for the Southern Maryland, which of course we've been talking about for a number of years now, that's a possible use of these Garvey bond monies. There are other things there too. I think there's something there for just about everybody on that list, but that one was just interesting to me. Yeah, most people. All right, we'll find something for you. Monorail, yeah. I like a monorail, I'll tell you the truth. It's funny, I've been having this discussion for years about monorails with Delegate Pendergrass. She loves them. She thinks it's the best thing in the world. And maybe we will go down that route at some point. What's that?
Do you have a copy of that proposal?
I have to consult with Walt on that,
If you don't,
of Disney fame. But yes.
Have you
No.
seen the presentation on that?
The one for the corridor, the 270 corridor?
Yeah.
I have not now.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I'll get you a copy.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. Senator Edwards.
Well, I do think there's at least one not on here that ought to be on here if we're looking at potentially need in the future, which is in Allegheny and Garrett County, we've been working for years on the north-south highway. And that's been in the works for a period of time. Matter of fact, 219, the north part of this is already under construction with ARC funding, because that's the only road in the state that money could be spent on. We're going halfway to the Pennsylvania line, and Pennsylvania needs 5.5 more miles. So we're working with Pennsylvania to figure out where we're going to connect and then go from there. So, I mean, if this is looking, I mean, it may never need it, that you're probably looking to do, we got about another mile once we get to that point to do, 1.5 miles at the most, be about $60 million maybe. Because the piece we just did was 67, but that includes a big interchange on Interstate 68. So if nothing else, now I'm not sure who the sponsor of this bill talked to the department, but I'd like to add at least a north-south highway in Allegheny Garrett County as we continue to look for that might be something in the future can be used on.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the risk of going down the road of sort of adding all kinds of projects on this, I mean, my understanding from the sponsor is that these are the items that the administration realistically assumes it could potentially use, given sort of the overall funding amounts and how they would think they would use it. That doesn't preclude, obviously, other things going on, but that's who they want to use. I mean, at this point, I'm willing to sort of accept their recommendations of how they think they could use this one funding mechanism. It's not, obviously, this isn't to exclude any projects, Senator, including your own. But if, my suggestion would be, if you really think it should be added, that maybe you want to have a conversation with the administration on it, because they're the ones who really have come up with this list. Is that correct, Senator?
A couple comments that you made are correct. One of them is that they are.
Not all of them? Not all of them. That sounds about right.
Yeah, in reference to them already having the ability to use federal dollars to be able to leverage for projects that already exist, this is just capitalizing on that piece of it. And this was within the project scope of geographic diversity and what they sent over, working with the House of Delegates with the counterpart over in there to make sure that we still were geographically represented. We looked at the electric buses and the lots to make sure, because we looked at that as being able to touch every jurisdiction. I think that we just had the buses in there. He said, please put infrastructure also because of the charging station. So this was trying to figure out how do we touch each and every part of everybody's district and not make it one jurisdiction too heavy.
Senator Eckert?
Thank you very much, and I want to thank the Senator for his explanation on that. Does this preclude any activity on a third Bay Bridge activity? Does anybody know that?
This is just about the Garvey bonds, right?
Right, this doesn't affect the third span.
They wouldn't be in that anyway, because I know that's a major concern to the Eastern Shore delegation. Traffic is bad.
And
Anyway,
everybody who wants to go over there, absolutely.
I don't want to take another 4 hours on a Friday night getting home.
Understood.
Anyway, thank you. Just
You
clarification.
bet. Senator Peters?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just, my colleague from Baltimore, appreciate what he's putting in here. We have a priority list from our county, and it's just a question of if I could just check back and see if this is, because we were on the call the other day, and Marina Drive seemed to be the hot issue for the county executive. So, again, I'm not sure, but I would just like to circle back if that's okay.
I think it's fine if you all want to circle back. I mean, at least from my perspective, this doesn't give anybody a priority, doesn't change anything. All it says is that this is the financing mechanism for these, that these could potentially be used for. And that's am I correct, Senator?
Very much so. These are also projects that are already in the CTP. So all of these are already in the CTP. With the Arena Drive, we did check on that, and they are trying to work out something with Commerce with that piece of it. But that, I just want to let you know that I did check in to that piece of it.
I guess my question is that we went through this whole thing with Southern Maryland Rapid Transit a couple of years ago. We
Yep.
put the money in, and then they needed right-of-way money, and the administration really wanted the bus lanes. They didn't want the rapid transit, so it got rejected. So anyway, I'm
Yep.
just
I understand.
being careful here.
I understand. That's fine. Happy to put a little hold on it. We'll just move this to, let's move this to Friday. So we'll move that till Friday's voting session. Senator Rosenthal.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, I thought the bill merely sort of increased the limit to use Garvey bonds. Why do we need the bill? Let's start, why do we need the bill?
So the Garvey bonds were authorized to issue $750 million. Those were issued, those
Yeah.
were paid off.
Yeah.
There is no authority to issue
Okay,
anymore.
so it's to raise the cap.
It's to correct it, well,
Eliminate the
Cap
cap?
doesn't raise, right? Or does it?
right, it's leaving the $750 million cap in place, but it's saying you can keep issuing them. You don't have to come back for new authority, as long as you stay under $750 million.
Okay, it's not raising the cap, I understand.
Yep.
So my second question then is, the examples that Senator McCray used, is the use of this limited to those projects by
Correct.
law in this bill?
Correct. if they issue, the bonds are gonna go towards these six
Okay,
projects.
so whatever's on the list is in, and whatever's not on the list is out.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
But they are all the projects obviously are subject, even the ones on the list would be subject for funding in a different way other than the Garvey bond. I mean, yeah, it could be, yeah, let me just clarify again, Senator McCray. And I heard your description of working with folks on the other side, but you did work with the administration, yes?
Very much so that Secretary Slater got the list. He sent me a list. I'm looking at the email. Starting March 15th, so today was, well, he sent it on March 13th. I apologize. That's Saturday, March 13th, and been having that discussion going forward. And also just trying to make sure that we can get in the posture that the House has reservations about this. I know we're the Senate, we're a separate chamber, but just trying to figure out how to work that out also, too.
That's fine. So my suggestion would be check with your locals if you feel like that this mechanism is something that you think that's something your community should be involved in. And secondly, my request would be that you further consult with the secretary, because obviously he's got some plan for what reasonably can be accommodated with $750 million, even in a revolving sense. And I presume that he made those calculations, decisions, as he was having conversations with the senator. So, okay? All right, Friday. 618.
Senate Bill 618 is the State Lakes Protection and Restoration Fund mandatory funding bill. The bill increases the funding mandate for the State Lakes Fund from $1 million a year to $3 million a year.
So I'd like to hold this for now. We may have a mechanism to deal with this in the budget, and so I think it's an important program. It's a funny thing that years ago I learned, I assume most of you all know, that we don't have any natural occurring lakes in the state. They're all man-made, which is kind of funny to even think about, but that's the way it is. And as such, we obviously have some maintenance concerns. So again, I think we may have a solution on that, so we're going to hold that for now. Okay, 477.
Okay, Senate Bill 477 is dealing with an appropriation to the Enoch Pratt Free Library. Back in 2016, a $3 million per year that ended in fiscal '22 was required, with the city providing a 25% match. So what this bill does is basically extends that $3 million mandate in perpetuity, as well as the match from the city in perpetuity. And it does add an annual report, and it states that the intent of these increased hours is to use to advance equity, inclusion, and access. That's the bill.
Thoughts on this from folks? Senator McCray?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, this is a bill that currently just keeps going the program that's already there. It shows in reference to making sure that the extended hours and the 6 days a week in reference to our libraries. I think that it was during the hearing, it was extensive work in reference to, I remember you asking a couple questions about how much good that it's actually doing and how the folks are serving it, and we're just looking to keep this going. So it's not something that's new, but trying to just make sure that we keep going something that we already have.
What's the city's match on this?
I believe it's $750,000.
Yeah, it's stated as 25%, which is $750. Plus, the city would pay for retirement costs if they were to expand their staffing.
And how many branches do they have in the city? Do we know?
That one I'm not,
They're all over the city.
they
right?
are all over the city. I know I got 4 in my district.
Wait, I have a note. Fiscal note. It looks like 21 branches, 6 days a week.
Yeah, I mean, and I asked that for the inclusiveness feature of all of this. I love the libraries, and I love them being open. This keeps them at, how many, is it 7 days a week?
6 days a week.
6 days.
And my district was a direct benefactor. The one that benefited from this was the Heron Run Park branch. We had it open 4 or 5 days a week, and it was closed in early hours. And because of the bill passed, and we were able to make sure the folks in Bel Air, Addison, and the adjacent neighborhoods had somewhere. I don't need to reiterate it. What the library does for communities, those folks that don't have computers, this is the hub where they use it. The young people, when they get out of school, this is where they go at. And in reference to what it just does for our futures, I think that Senator King and Senator Alford both had large, important bills in reference to this subject piece of it. So I don't think that it goes on the committee that know how important these are to communities as hubs.
Is there a motion?
Favorable.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Now it's the last one for you, Ms. Senator McCray. I don't know, you and your seat meet over there. You gotta step up your game. All right. 538.
All right, you do have a reprint on your desk for this bill. This bill originally came in as you know, in state law, there are many provisions requiring community colleges to essentially waive tuition or residency status. And what this bill does, as it was introduced, it would require the state to basically reimburse that with a mandated appropriation of $10 million starting in fiscal '23. As amended, the bill also would add for both the Cade Community Colleges, BCCC, and for Selinger. As you know, their funding formulas are based on a percentage of the per pupil amounts that the USM schools get, and that's stated as a percentage in the statute. And this, in the out years, would increase each of those funding formulas. For either, well, for one of them was just 2023, another one was 2024. So for Cade, Selinger, it would be an increase for 2023 and 2024. For Cade, it would be an increase beginning in 2024. And the formula would change for BCCC starting in fiscal 2023.
So it still has the waiver portion in here too?
Yeah, that portion has not been, is not amended in
Yeah,
this.
so
reprint.
this, a lot of discussion about, for years, of course, and plenty of us have played various roles along Senator King, Senator Zucker, others I'm sure. And I know I have even when I was over in the House. There's the, and we're going to hear on the floor with my collective bargaining bill tomorrow, I presume. We're going to hear discussion again about, particularly as it relates to Cade, sort of this idea that occurred years ago to somehow, basically speaking, have the costs of community college bore by a third by the state, a third by the counties, and a third by tuition. Now, that was always kind of a goal, and at times, over the course of the years, we've readjusted in the budget committees, many times actually, the formulas. And particularly in down times, we have adjusted those formulas down. And I know that the community colleges, Selinger, the whole grouping, would love us to be at that sort of that defined or sort of aspirational goal. we're not going to get there even with this bill. But when it first started going, I thought the approach would be with this waiver bill, because I do think that's another issue, quite frankly. We've put out some mandates for free tuition for any number of different very worthy individuals who it makes sense for. That has a cost to it. The bill came in at about $10 million. But upon sort of the reflection of this budget process and some of the discussions that have gone on throughout this session, it seemed to me, and that's why I've modified this, and I will actually suggest that we take out the waiver provision out of this altogether to get to a reasonable fiscal cost. To just include the adjustments to the formulas. And so I know you read off some numbers, Erica, but if you could, I don't know if do you have the chart with you? Yeah. So just again, sort of as we go to the aspirational part, the jump up, for instance, in CADE gets us up to 30% on the chart. Is that right?
Correct.
Sure.
Yeah, so, sorry, did you?
Senator King's got a question.
Does this do anything to get us to the point where we aren't begging every single year for Cade and Sellinger?
Well, the answer is, I mean, I think it doesn't change. The formula itself is a mandate.
Yeah,
So no matter what we do,
we're
the
still begging
governor
the
still
governor.
can come back and
Okay.
say, I can't fund it at the formula level,
Okay.
and we have a contingent reduction, and then we have to figure out how to come up. And as you may all know, the House yesterday fully funded CADE at the formula level that it is for this year. And it's my expectation when we all finish our work in the next couple of days that we'll be doing the same. So it's a good step, and it's a good place to be at. And given the overall situation that we're in, it seemed to me that this was the right time to try to bump the formula up a little more for future years, and that's what this amendment does. Senator Young.
Yeah, I had a bill in for about 5 straight years for free community college, and about 2 or 3 years ago now, we passed Senator Pinsky's bill. Are we going different directions, and instead of trying to fund that, than putting money in other funds? I mean, doesn't it make sense to consolidate it all and try to make that program work to whatever extent it can? And is anybody monitoring how that's working? I've talked to a lot of kids that go to community college that don't even know it exists. Mm-hmm. And
I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, the funding for that, the schools still need an influx. That's helping the students, right? And it pays
Well,
for the cost of it.
but my question is,
but I guess if we're living or trying to aspirationally get to the place that we were before, helping the schools themselves get more state funding, I believe is still necessary, personally.
so this money's not going towards tuition for students?
Well, I mean, theoretically, could institutions use it for that purpose if they thought that was the purpose? But I think it's probably mostly for operating costs, with the exception of Sellinger, which does primarily use the money for assistance to students. But that's a different sort of nature of program to begin with.
Well, I guess I'm just saying I would think anything that's going towards tuition ought to all go in one fund that's handled uniformly, rather than having multiple programs going. wonder about that sometimes when I see a half a dozen different bills all going towards kind of the same thing, but all doing something a little different. Why we can't pull them all together and make it work more efficiently. As far as community colleges are concerned, I don't think we can give them enough. They're the best buy you can possibly have to help kids get through college that can't go. I can tell you, coming from an extremely poor family, I would have never gotten to college if it hadn't been for community college. And then I had 4 sons and trying to figure out how to get them through. And all 4 went to community college, as I did. And they all have advanced degrees now. And community college made that happen for them and for hundreds of other kids I know in my area, and I think all across the state. So I don't think we can do enough for them. But I am, I look at what was ended up being Pinsky's bill, that rather than having scholarships and stuff like that, why can't we just direct all we can into one pot and make it happen efficiently instead of having people go different directions?
Appreciate the point of view. Senator Eckert.
Thank you very much. How much is in the budget currently for the community colleges? And then what would CADE be?
For the community colleges, current law is, let's see, for 2022, $290 million. The BRFA would have brought that down to 263, as you had the chairman say, the House has restored that. So that's for 22. I have a chart going up to 26. I can give you all the, how many?
Why don't you tell her what 26 is
Yeah.
with the amendment, with the
Okay.
both,
Well,
as current law and then with the amendment.
Okay, so current law, basically, with the percentage of the 4-year per pupil amount that's referenced in the law. For 22, that percentage is referenced as 27% for 22.
Right.
Current law has that going up to 29%
Right.
for 23 and beyond. This amendment here would, in 24, so it would keep the 29% in 23, and then the amendment would bump that up to 30% beginning in 24 and beyond.
And it just stays at 30%
It would,
then?
yes, under these amendments, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm just keeping track of how much we're spending each voting session. I just want to, yeah, and
I do every time too, Senator.
oh, good. Well, I think we need to see the spreadsheet.
You should see the charts and spreadsheets I have in the back.
All right, thank you. That's what because I give myself a budget. You may have heard this before.
Yes.
So I know how many things I can afford to spend on before I have to empty out my closet and start over again.
Yes.
Thank you.
Complicated calculation.
Yep, thank you.
But, it really is. We're working very hard to come up with some good software on this, to be honest with you, but we're getting there. Senator Zucker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just turned on my mic to help with the discussion, answering any questions that people might have had. Just to Senator Young's question about, the importance of CADE. This is for to make sure that community colleges have an understanding of what to expect when it comes to their operating funding, and also helping with tuition. This has been in existence for a while. One of the benefits, and as you know, Sellinger helps provide opportunities for low-income family students to attend. But one of the things that's been successful, I think, about both Cade and Sellinger is it's a link to the 4-year schools. I mean, the way that their funding is calculated is based on the 4-year average of students enrolled and the cost there. So it's really I don't want to say forced, but it's really created a good partnership between your university system in Maryland schools, your community colleges, and your independent colleges. The independent colleges is what's associated with Sellinger, and the CADE is associated with the community colleges.
Senator Rosebeth.
Thank you. I got one question and then one comment. So the bill, if we adopt the amendments, simply increases the percentage of state funding to the community colleges, and that then flows through to Sellinger as well?
No, it's both.
It's both.
It's separate charts.
Okay.
And there's a separate chart for
Okay.
BCCC.
Okay, so it increases that.
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, I thought I heard him say without the amendments.
No, I said with the amendment.
With the amendments.
Okay.
With the amendments. And it provides no reimbursement for the
The waiver.
the waivers.
That's correct.
Okay. And this would be permanent.
Well, look, as I've mentioned,
Well, permanent until-
these charts have been changed dozens of times.
No, I said but permanent pending the next BRFA.
Correct.
I
That is
understand.
absolutely correct.
I understand. And so, how much money, in additional money to community colleges, and how much money to the privates with the bill as amended in the year it takes effect, and then a few years thereafter? Just so I get my head around the numbers.
I'll start with CADE, because that's been most of the discussion here. Starting in, the first time that this would have a fiscal impact is fiscal '24, and that would be with our projections, obviously, of enrollment, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
$10.9 million more than current law.
Okay.
In '25, doing some quick math here, it looks like 11.3.
Okay, I get the range.
Okay,
And
yep.
what about Sellinger?
Sellinger, that first impact will be in fiscal '23 with a $1.5 million increase.
I understand.
And then that bumps up to, that has two bumps ups of that percentage linkage, ending at 16%. And in 2024, that 16% would be a $3 million cost.
Okay, thank you. That gives me a sense of the amount of money. Now the comment. I feel like the traditional formula, the one-third, 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 is kind of a relic of a couple of centuries, not centuries, decades past. I don't know whether it was first passed.
It is.
And I think public expectations and policy expectations in the legislature for community colleges have changed in that period of time. One is the thing that Senator Young talked about, is tremendous interest, and again, I hate coming back to President Biden, but there's a national effort that's been going on for a number of years that Senator Young's bills was part of and Senator Pinsky's, is to try to get to tuition-free community college. Well, that's not the same as one-third, one-third, one-third. That's a whole different strategy. It's a whole different concept of community college. That's one. Second
Although it
is...
could still be the same.
Sorry?
It could be the same as one-third, one-third, in a sense.
Technically, I mean, mechanically it could be, but conceptually...
Yes,
The old plan was there should be tuition and it should cover a third of it.
absolutely.
And the free community college says it's a different way of conceptualizing what community college does, in my view. Secondly, Kerwin, that we've adopted, basically lays out two very different roles for community colleges going forward in Kerwin. One is to bring the first 2 years of community college down into high school. That's a big, big goal of Kerwin. And this comes from, I apologize, sounding like I used to serve on the EHE, but I did, is negotiating how the money flows between the local school systems and the community colleges is one of the least pleasant things I've ever been involved in. But the Kerwin strategy is basically as many kids as possible, in fact, are going to get their community college courses while they're in high school. That's a big, big change in the old paradigm. Second one is workforce. Is Kerwin, again, says we want all the kids coming out of high school to have youth apprenticeships with related instructions, some of which will be provided in the schools and some of which will be provided by the community colleges. And I raise this question because I think our funding of the community colleges has become unstuck from the policy. And I'm not saying that to say we should kill this bill, but I am saying that to say I think we need to come back with the policy committees and really readdress
Yep.
so we get the incentives from the funding matching the policy goals.
Yeah, I don't know that that's finding that sweet spot, I think, is going to be a challenge, a big challenge. And my personal interests at the moment are sort of keep the ball rolling and put the resources where I think, at least personally believe are necessary. But I don't disagree with you at all. I think, and I don't disagree with Senator Young either. I think it does need to all come together, and I think it's going to take a little time. I think it's going to take, quite frankly, it's going to take years. Not too many years, I hope. But really to be functioning and in the degree that you're talking about. Yeah, you bet. Anyone else? Senator Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not to belabor the commentary here, but this is 10 million. The waiver's going to be out, so it's going to go to the formula for community college. And I thought Erica said 1.5 for Selinger. So is it 11.5 or is it 10 and it's split?
23, without the waiver, the cost will be 1.45 because that's only Selinger that gets the increase in 23. In 24, both Cade and Selinger experience an increase. And so the total fiscal note would then be 13.9.
I want to follow up on a commentary from Senator Frederick and Prince George's talk about free tuition, and I'm going to brag on my county a little bit. Garrett was the first in the country, maybe second. There was one in Tennessee. I'm not sure which one of us was first.
Yep.
Where the county does provide free tuition to Garrett Community College for youngsters or students who graduate from the high schools. Now they've expanded that to homeschooling, I think, and maybe some other thing, but it still has to be within the county, which has been very beneficial because they've already studied and determined a lot of students wouldn't have went there if it wouldn't have been for this program. So that does work, and the Promise program was somewhat based on what Garrett County did that we passed a couple of years ago. But I do believe we're not putting enough money in community college. I get yelled at for some of the four-year institution people here. I think we're putting more than enough in those institutions. I think we need to look more now at community colleges and put more money in community colleges, because if you look at across the country, there's four-year institutions shutting down because students can't afford the cost of some of these four-year institutions. They're not going there. More people are going to get, as Senator Rosepep said, 2-year degrees and a certificate or something, which you're going to get at a community college, because you can, in the trades, you can get a job after 2 years and make way more money than you can get if you get a 4-year degree in some four-year institutions, depending on what it's in. So you're going to see more people going to community colleges. So I think at some point the legislature maybe needs to sit down and look at this whole picture and say, maybe we need to start redirecting some education funding and putting more into the community colleges, a little less in the four-year institution from whence it is, where it is now, and look at it from that perspective, because the community colleges are spread throughout the state, which gives everybody pretty well equal opportunity to improve their education, whether it's through certificate or through academic. To stay, at home and save money. It doesn't cost them near as much, and they're more likelihood will try to improve their educational knowledge in the future. And with that, I'll keep quiet, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator King.
Yeah, real quick, I was speaking with the Montgomery College president, Dr. Pollard, just last week or week before last, and not just Montgomery College, but most of the community colleges around the state are doing programs, short-term programs for people coming in, not even looking for 2-year degrees, but retooling and finding ways to get jobs that they have never done before. And there's a lot of that. And a lot of the classes are short-term classes. They had a 2-month class to teach people how to give COVID vaccines, but there's a lot of retooling for people that need jobs, and that's what happens in the community colleges. I just, they can't be beat. They don't do that in four-year schools, but they do it in community colleges.
Thank you. Senator Elfreth?
Thank you. Just to echo all of my colleagues, the 4 years, and Senator Rosepep knows as well from the Board of Regents, the 4 years oftentimes have fund balances. They have private money that they've raised. The community colleges don't have that cushion for the rough years and for what they're going to get experience in the next couple of years. And so giving them, as Senator Zucker said, some consistency in the CADE formula will go a tremendously long way for those 2 years that are just frankly more vulnerable than the 4 years. Thank you.
Senator Zucker, were you just still on?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'll just, finalize my thoughts in terms of, this past year was really tough with everything going on, and it's been a challenge to make sure we're doing what we can to fully fund Cade and Sellinger, and I feel like this is, you could use the word necessary or the right move to start making based on the fact that, just this past July, the Board of Public Works met. I mean, community colleges and these independent colleges have been cut close to $40 million just this year. That's aside from anything we may or may not restore on our end. So this is a good way to at least move forward in playing catch up with them and getting their operating expenses done in order for them to serve their students.
Okay, so I'm going to move that we take this as amended, and the amendment would also include removing the waiver portion.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, unanimous. Thank you. $551.
All right, Senate Bill 551, you also have a reprint on your desk. These amendments are coming from the sponsor of the bill. This is the bill, pardon me, this is the bill that would have established like an incentive funding structure for projects being brought in under cost. What this amendment does is it strikes out all of those provisions and instead creates a work group that would meet throughout this interim and provide a report November 1st of this year. And it would be working together with the IAC, MACO, MML, maybe not MML, Public School Superintendents, Association of Boards of Education, IAC, and MACO, and produce a report on these same type of things. I would recommend within this reprint, on the last page of the bill, I would recommend one little word change in subsection H. Instead of having DBM appropriate, to strike appropriate and use the word disperse. DBM technically doesn't appropriate.
Senator.
Mr. Chairman, I accept Erica's suggestion as a friendly amendment, number one. Number two, just to give you context here, this springs out of my, it seems like career long, but it's not that long, but it's a 6 or 7 year long effort to try to get us to make our school construction dollars go farther. And we made some progress in it. This bill was developed with the IAC out of a work group that Senator Ferguson and I sat on, I guess, last summer, maybe the summer before. And it would, in its original form, it basically would have said, if the projected total cost of ownership of a new building, is less than the average projection, which IAC has worked up, the state share would be somewhat bigger. If you were 10% below that number, you'd get 7.5% more state money to incentivize but not require local school systems to look at ways to do that. MACO objected to it. We had long discussions with MACO because they're of the view that they didn't really understand how the formulas would work, what the databases would be, and they wanted to have a lot more discussion about it. And so we worked out this amendment with MACO so that we can get people at the table over the next year to see if we can come to some agreement around this. And that's what the bill does as amended.
Very good. Favorable. Second. All in favor?
Thank you.
Senator McCray? Unanimous? Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to make a comment in part, not about this per se, not your bill, but a comment in particular that Senator Eckert brought up, and I want, and I know I've said things like this before about sort of keeping running tabs of things and the concerns, and what I want you to first know is that you're going to see this week some of these bigger cost things because I've actually been waiting until we got to this crossover point before I brought those forward, because I felt like we needed to get through what we really needed to do, so I could sort of reasonably analyze our position. The other thing I want to tell you, which may or may not give you much comfort, because it means that we're not doing a bunch of bills that we're passed or we're going to pass. And as you know, with all the discussion about the federal money and the implications of tax cuts, so all those things that we passed already that were tax cuts, and some of them were small, but they were all different sizes and shapes, and there would have probably been more moving forward. We won't be doing them, at least as it looks right now, for the most part. There may be a couple of exceptions, but so I wanted to hopefully help share the overall perspective of the pieces that go into, at least what I see as my job, that we don't go too far, but that we do the things that we think are really priorities. So that's, I just wanted to share that little bit of perspective. Is that a record?
But is somebody keeping tally of all the things that pass on the floor?
Absolutely.
Got it, thank you.
Not only are we keeping tally of that, we're keeping tally of what's going on in the House, and then what's likely to maybe do both bodies. I mean, it's a complicated endeavor to try to understand the full implication of it. And I actually think the interesting point, at least from my perspective, and of course, I haven't sat in this position that long, but when I think back, even like when we were back on appropriations together, there's always been some sense of keeping track. But I feel even a heightened sense over the last couple of years to get better at that. And quite frankly, I'm going to tell you that one of the more important and challenging questions for those of us who are here next term will be the implications of question 1 and our ability to move money around within the governor's budget, which is going to add a whole nother level of dynamics. And whether we're here or not, we've already been talking with staff and some others, some members, to spend some time this summer just trying to figure out how to keep track of that as we go along in the process, just as we're doing now, so that we make rational decisions at the end of the day and come up with good budgets, as we always have. I mean, remember, the biggest check at the end of the day is that we do have the other house. And sometimes when it gets to the point where we might realize along the way that we've gone too far, that relationship with the other house and what they're willing to do and what we're willing to do seems to balance things out relatively well, quite frankly. It has for years and years. But in many ways, because of the preparation and thinking about what question 1's implications will be, we've been taking more time thinking about what kind of data we need as we move forward, for what it's worth. Okay? You have something to say?
Just one more thing, and I know you're tired of hearing me go on about this, and my other concern is that, again, what I said, we have a lot of departments, and I know we're in a 2-year window here, I get that, and things will change, but if we don't take care of the infrastructure that we have within state government, as we add these new things, new initiatives, we're selling our citizens and our constituencies short. So, that's, to me, the balance of making sure we're building a strong house, for the future as well.
Agreed. But and the interesting thing, I'm sure you would agree, the interesting thing about that, just as has been presented, we had the discussion earlier about the community colleges and the evolution. So not only are we trying to maintain and hold on to what we have, but also evolve into something even better. And that's not an easy, all of that discussion and trying to make all that work together is a very complicated process, at least from my mind's sake. Senator Roosevelt.
I just wanted to throw some optimism into this discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I actually think question 1 is going to help a lot. I mean, I think the reason historically, I guess back to 1916, but certainly as long as all of us have been around, that we have all these bills, like we're dealing with today, about mandating funding hither and yon, is because we don't have annual control over the budget. And so, once we move to that system, exactly your points, which I totally agree with Senator Eckert, about the basic services of state government. Politically, I'll speak for myself, it's sometimes easier to get some money back home to your county than it is to invest in a state agency. And so, once we have them all together on an annual basis, on a long-term basis, I hope it will refocus all of our thinking on these priorities in relation to each other. Because the problem we had pre-question one is we had to go around all these rules, and we went all around these rules. And I think that made it more complex, but I think seeing it all together will actually make it easier for us to do the kinds of things you're thinking about. So I might be wrong.
Okay. Yes.
I just want to make sure, because I thought there was already a group like this put together, and I want to make sure we're not going to have two groups that are looking at school construction.
Oh,
No. This is a very specific.
This is the only school construction work group?
No, but they're two different.
your mic's not on.
I'm sorry?
Your mic is not on.
I'm sorry. Yeah, no, they're two different. There is one looking at past construction, facilities, how they're being maintained. And that one is still ongoing. This is simply looking specifically at incentive for future construction. They're two separate things. And that was the issue.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why we would have two, though. I mean, we have so darn many work groups that I just want to be sure we're not duplicating, that's all.
Well, I don't think we're duplicating it all, very frankly, Senator.
Okay.
But both MACO and the IAC really wanted to do it this way. That's the best way I can describe it.
Okay.
They thought this was the most efficient way to do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Senator Peters.
I serve on that, and we've been waiting for an inventory of all the schools so that we can decide how we're going to handle that. Now, this was discussed in that work group. So we are breaking off a piece of that in this study group, which may be consisting of different people. So just for FYI.
Okay. All right. Next bill is 858.
Okay, Senate Bill 858, again, you have a reprint on your desk. The bill came in as, again, another mandate requiring the governor to include at least $3 million for Coppin State University, again, either in the operating budget or the capital budget, to establish a student union and dormitories using prioritizing using a P3. When I looked at this and I talked to the chair and he said to bring this amendment up for your consideration, typically when you guys get these sorts of bills, you'll see language that clarifies that additional $3 million would be supplemental to any existing funding that they would normally get. So that's there for your consideration. And so that's the bill between fiscal 23 and 26, $3 million additional for Coppin.
Senator Peters.
I just consider the mandating the capital budget. We are putting in all these mandates for the capital budget. And this is a specific project, and there's normally a process we go through for school construction. I just worry about the precedent of this bill. You know, if we want to do this, my thought would be to put it in the capital budget for $3 million and pre-auth the rest and go from there. If it's a P3, you can't use capital money anyway. So, you know, we're doing it in Prince George's. We're doing $30 million a year for X amount of years. So it's kind of apples and oranges here. I want to help. I want to support. I just think that this is a tricky, slippery slope here if we start mandating projects through bills. So,
Okay.
just
So what I think I'm hearing is we should hold this because we're getting ready to finish up on our capital budget process, and we'll see what happens in that process. Thank you, Mr. Chairman of the Capital Budget. Okay, 9:43.
Okay, you have another reprint on your desk for this bill as well. So this is the bill that would, this deals with kind of the strategic partnership between UMB and College Park and the two centers that they operate. The last time you guys saw this bill, it would, for 23 and beyond, basically mandate $2.5 million for each of those centers. What is new in the bill before you now is on page 4, the last page, this amount of money that would go towards moving some schools towards their funding guideline attainment levels. The way it was drafted, it had a compounding effect, so the $4 million would turn into $20 million 4 years out. So this would strike that phrase, lines 18 through 19, that creates that compounding effect. So what this would effectively do then is USM would get an additional $4 million in each of fiscal years 23 through 27 to go towards reaching 68% of the funding guideline attainment.
Okay, what she just described was actually an error, and a technical correction from my perspective. It was an error in the bill. It wasn't supposed to be a compounding interest on that component of the bill. The bulk of this bill is really, as was discussed before, Empower, the deal that was struck a couple years ago. And as we all know, the success of that and the ability to of those two schools to sort of count themselves together and do big things with money and research, and this is to help continue to fund that as we move forward. Does anyone have any questions? Is there a motion?
Move favorable with amendments.
All right, all those in favor? Unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. That concludes our work session for today. How many bills do we have on the schedule for tomorrow morning?
Maybe 5 or 6.
Okay, yes. So what, 8:30? All right, so, look, I want to keep these sessions all week long. I know it's a lot, but it's the best chance that we have to get our product moved across the street. So even if it's going to be a couple bills at one point or another, we're just going to keep doing this. And I think that's it. Are there any other questions? Very good. Good job today, everybody. Thank you.